You guys might have seen, and now forgive me, because for my entire life, I have thought that her name was Charlize Theron.
Same.
Charlize Theron. Turns out that after listening to the Call Her Daddy podcast, it's Charlize Theron.
I think this happens a lot in Hollywood, not with her, I think with loads of people, whereas we just make up a name, they can't be bothered to argue it, and then it sticks. Like we just call them the wrong name their whole life.
It does sound fancier, doesn't it?
Do you think Theron's cooler than Theron?
I love Charlize Theron. If I was her, that's what I'd go with.
Guys, we're getting bogged down because the thing that we're actually unpacking is not the fact that we've all been getting her name wrong. It is the fact that on Call Her Daddy recently, so this episode's gone quite viral, but the conversation surrounding it is more the fact that Charlize came out as a 49-year-old woman and said that she has had a fantastic one-night stand with a 26-year-old man. It has caused quite the backlash across social media. Have a listen to this.
Do you have any sex tip for the girls?
Sex tip? Like, what does that mean? Like, what does that mean? Like, how to have good sex? How to what? Have an orgasm?
Anything that like you think of girls could just like, you're hot, you're having good sex.
Okay, you're like, I almost choked. I am the last person to ask. I'm like sounding very cocky here, but I think it's because I have found this freedom in my 40s where I'm like, oh my God. So I just want to say this in perspective. I've probably had 3 one-night stands in my entire life.
Okay.
But I did just recently fuck a 26-year-old and it was really fucking amazing.
Fuck yes.
Yes. And I've never done that. And I was like, oh, this is great.
This has raised the question across social media. Now, there's been such a backlash, as I've said. And overarchingly, the argument seems to be, why is it okay for a woman who is 49 and has 2 children to brag about having sex with a younger 26-year-old man? But if a 49-year-old man bragged about having sex with a 26-year-old woman, we would all, quote unquote, be up in arms about it. I wanted to read you a couple of, and I did not have to dig deep for these comments at all. There are comments all over the YouTube video. The Instagram post of this has actually been archived. It's only now existing on TikTok, but there are so many negative comments. The top ones, from the tiniest scroll that I did, I'll read a couple of them out. A disgusting woman. If a man that was bragging like that about young girls, it would be a crime. But because this is a woman, it is feminism. Crazy. Next comment. Absolutely disgusting. She's old enough to be that kid's mother. If this was a 49-year-old guy talking about having a one-night stand with a 26-year-old, people would be in arms over it. But since it's a woman, they're like, yeah, go queen. Girl, you go get some. This is sad and lame. I have lost all respect for Charlize. Next one. Now let a man try that and it would be a very different story. Lastly, but when DiCaprio does this, he is considered a predator. Do we have more allowances for women who date down or who have one-night stands with 26-year-olds than what we do with men? Is there an imbalance here? Is there a bias?
I think your first statement that you read out then, the first comment, both things can be true, and I think both things are true. Would we be up in arms if a man said this? Yes. Like it would come across as maybe gross and predatory and unnecessary. Are we like, yes, queen, because she has said it? Yes. I think both of those statements are true, and they're true for different reasons. They're true because men do it and have done it consistently forever.
Yeah, totally.
It is a normal thing. And the fact that there is this much discourse around Charlize making this statement of sleeping with a 26-year-old, having a one-night stand, the fact that we are having so many conversations about it is because we don't hear it that often. It still comes across as quite shocking that a successful leading lady in Hollywood, a mother, and I say a mother because we're going to talk about that, but a lot of it is saying, how could you talk out loud about this when you're a mum, when you have 2 kids that are listening? We're so up in arms that a mother could enjoy sex and openly talk about it and do it with somebody that is younger than her. One of the most disgusting responses I have heard is Megyn Kelly. If you don't know Megyn Kelly, she's,
Lucky you.
Yeah, lucky you. She's an attorney. She's a journalist. She has the Megyn Kelly show. She's a political commentator. She's a Trump supporter. She's quite conservative and right-wing. But interestingly, she has been commenting quite extensively on the Megyn Kelly show that she has on YouTube about Charlize Theron's comments about having sex with a 26-year-old. But what I think is interesting to note before we get into it is Charlize played Megyn Kelly in Bombshell, which was the movie about the controversy around Fox News because she worked for Fox News for a long time. So there is a bit of a relationship already between Megyn and Charlize Theron, and apparently They haven't had quite a smooth relationship. They don't really like each other. Megan has spoken about that publicly. So I think that that's really interesting to note going into this when we play some of the things that Megan has said. Have listened to this. This is a little grab from the Megan Kelly show. She's doing a sit-down chat with a guy called Stu Bergery.
This is Charlize Theron trying to sound like super cool girl. She's 49 years old. She's trying to sound like she's 26 years old, and it's inappropriate. It feels weird. She's one of our biggest stars. That's true. Act like it. Act like it. Have some class. Like, honestly, it's a very strange thing to see one of our best known actresses sit down like that with the crossed legs with this sex podcaster talking about their orgasms and who they effed. It's just really off-putting and feels really it's a turnoff. My theory is it's an overcompensation. Your thoughts?
It's a bizarre society that elevates that sort of conversation, I would say. I guess that's supposed to make her like edgy, right? Like it's supposed to be, hey, look at me. I'll say it. I'll just say it. I like doing that. It seems pathetic. It seems like you're trying too hard.
Imagine being a woman talking about your sexuality and talking about sex, because this is in a broader context on this podcast about sexual empowerment, about how she doesn't need to or feel like she needs a man or a companionship, and she's actually just enjoying sex for the first time fully in her life, and to be told that you sound desperate for talking about this.
Or trying to be a cool girl. And also the fact that they're so openly intentionally trying to shame her for owning her sex life. She's literally on a relationship based podcast. Like, yes, it's a conversation podcast, Call Her Daddy. They talk to amazing people all over the world, but the core of it has always been sex and relationships, and they always try to incorporate sex and relationships. So I think the setting is really important. She hasn't gone onto a political podcast and said, vote for this person and I fuck 26-year-olds.
Totally.
But they're intentionally trying to take it out of context by not including any of the setup of the questions and shame her for owning her sexuality.
I feel like I actually have to admit, I saw this on every other news publication before I saw it on Call Her Daddy's Instagram. And a part of me was like, that is a weird thing to say. Like, it's a weird thing to just bring up out of nowhere, which is how all the publications kind of implied that it was. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd be doing that. And we talk pretty openly about everything here. There was an element of me that was like, it's just a bit strange. And then I listened to the entire episode, and I listened to her talk about her whole life, how she had an experience in Hollywood that was very similar to like a Me Too experience with a director. She's not outed the person. She was talking with Alex about how she hasn't felt like she could advocate for herself of what she wanted, or she didn't have the confidence to, speak up about these people in Hollywood. And it was a part of a much broader conversation about confidence and about owning your sexuality. And this particular part was what came directly after the conversation saying, I fucked a 26-year-old.
This goes back to, I think this is kind of like a thread throughout our conversation. Women who come across as confident, women who come across as like outspoken, ones that wouldn't speak up for themselves, tend to also be in bed people who want to please males. Like, and I have found this in my experiences with talking to other women about this. Isn't it strange? Like, we should be the ones that are like, fuck you. Like, I'm going to have an orgasm. And yet my whole life was so concerned about
Same.
the same.
Same.
Okay.
Oh my God.
So my advice would be this: don't fucking do that. For two reasons. You're going to have better orgasms. And guess what? Your man's going to like that.
I think the big thing and what has been the overwhelming reaction online is this conversation around a double standard. Well, if a man was to say this, we would be so up in arms. But because a woman has said it, a 49-year-old mother of two has said it about a 26-year-old. And it's so weird how we refer to 26-year-old as like, she could be his mother. Firstly, she's not his mother. He's 26. He's a grown adult.
He's a man.
And he's a consenting man who has not been identified in any way, shape, or form. There are so many reasons why people feel very differently about Leonardo DiCaprio dating a 19-year-old than Charlize Theron coming out and saying that she's had great sex with a 26-year-old. The reality is that, yes, absolutely, if you want to look at it and paint it in a black and white way, there is a double standard there. But the double standard has existed long, long, long before. Men don't need to go on podcasts and say, I fucked a 26-year-old and had a great time. They're doing it anyway. It is the cliche and cultural standard that men date down, that women, when they hit the age of 49 or 50 or 60, that we have an expiration date on our sexuality, on our value, on our importance, and that it is kind of expected that men will date a younger model. My thing is sometimes a double standard needs to exist because it's kind of like a rebalancing. And I'm not saying that there's nothing predatory about what Charlize has done. There is nothing that should be deemed as being vulgar. Because I guess like the thing is we're so used to seeing men date down, and for a 49-year-old to date a 26-year-old, that is not even a big deal. When people I think are up in arms about it is when the age disparity is like a 50-year-old and a literal 21-year-old or a 19-year-old. And I guess it's not even a one-night stand. It's like that's their girlfriend. That's who they've chosen for their life partner is when people seem to find that there's a bit of an odd experience that's happening there.
But even just the fact that it's expected for men to date down, it's normal. A man dates down or hooks up with somebody or situationship, whatever it is, it's not really reported on in terms of there being a problem. It's reported on that the relationship, and I'm talking about people in the public eye, it's reported on that there is a relationship. But women have a literal name for it. You're a cougar. Like we have a name for it, that if you choose to date someone younger than you, we're going to slap this label on you that, I mean,
it's embarrassing.
It's derogatory. Like the whole reason that we came up with the term of being a cougar is like, what does a cougar do? Like it goes and eats prey. Like that's what it is. Like that's the idea of it if you really want to break it down. We're still just so uncomfortable with women in general owning their sexuality and talking about sex. We're still like, obviously this goes back to hundreds of years in the patriarchy. We're still so uncomfortable with it. But even as Megyn Kelly said, we're so uncomfortable with it when it's somebody in the public eye. She says, you're our biggest star, act like it. What does acting like a star mean? Every single star has sex. I think that that's okay. And yeah, Hollywood used to be an enigma. It used to be a mystery, and you didn't have this parasocial relationship. You didn't have access to them. The only way you had access to anyone in the public eye was if you went and saw a movie or they decided on their own to do a press tour or an interview. But we expect different things from our stars now. You have to be relatable to your audience to stay relevant in a way. And that's just a part of where our culture's moving. And this is what they're doing. The context is right. She's on a press tour. She's on a sex and relationships-based conversation podcast. She's done nothing wrong. I do think a bit of the shock value came from maybe the words she used to describe it. I think because she said fuck twice in a sentence, and I know it shouldn't matter, but if we're breaking it down, I think it would have hit a little different if she said, you know what, I recently hooked up with a 26-year-old and it was really amazing.
Yeah, or had a one-night stand.
Yeah,
it's
and
visceral to say I fucked a 26-year-old.
I'm not saying it's wrong what she did, but I'm saying if you break it down, those two deliveries give you a different feeling.
I actually think that there's this weird thing that a lot of us struggle with in terms of age gap relationships. And often those conversations center around power, right? So, and one being predator, one being prey. And I don't want to make out that all age gap relationships where the gender dynamic is flipped to this situation where a man's older and a woman's younger, that they are always predator and prey. That's just simply not true. Look, do I find it a bit strange that she's hooking up with someone who's 26 rather than someone her age? Maybe a little bit. Each their own. You can make those decisions. What consenting adults do behind closed doors is absolutely none of my business. Do I think that she would have had some weird power imbalance dynamic over that person and that's why that person has chosen to sleep with her? No, I don't think that would have happened. And that was off the back of the conversation that she had, talking about how she had been in an experience with a Hollywood director who was much older than her, who pressured her and sexually harassed her and potentially sexually abused her. I don't know. She didn't go into detail. That to me shows that this woman understands consent. It shows that she understands what it's like to be on the other side of that power dynamic. Of course, I'm not making out by any means that men cannot be victims. I look at this particular situation and I don't think that it's a predator-prey dynamic.
It's because the reality is we're talking about reverse patriarchy here.
Yeah.
And reverse patriarchy does not exist. There is not a world where men are the ones who are being victimized by women. We don't live in that world. It's not a problem that men face on a day-to-day. Whereas we do know, and there is fucking research upon research to prove that in every society, in every culture across the world, it is something that women experience. And so when everyone's getting up in arms in the comment section and be like, think of the men. We don't need to think of the men.
And
They've
think
done it
of
for
the
years.
kids.
Or they're like, imagine if a man did this. And it's like, you don't need to imagine because men do it. It already exists. It is not just a cliche. It is literally the expected norm that men date down in age. So I really grappled with this because I was like, are all double standards a problem? And in this situation, I was like, yes, technically it's a double standard. Do I have a deep issue with it? No. Fucking go for gold, queen, and enjoy yourself.
I do think it's remiss of us to say and act like there is no power imbalance there. We don't know who the 26-year-old is. At the end of the day, she's one of Hollywood's leading actresses. She's worth over $200 million. There is a power imbalance if it's an everyday person. That doesn't mean it's negative, but the power imbalance exists. And we have seen a power imbalance in age gap relationships in the past where the woman is older. We've talked about them on the podcast. We spoke about Patrick Dempsey when he was 19 years old, marrying the older producer. But those power imbalances absolutely do exist. It doesn't mean it has to be used negatively, but it's there. But this 26-year-old, maybe he was a no one. Maybe he was Paul Mescal. Maybe he was someone super famous. And even though there's an age gap, it might not necessarily be a use of power. We don't know, and it's not for us to comment. Think about why it makes you uncomfortable. I think that is a really big thing. Like, I wonder why Megyn Kelly's so upset by this.
I think Megyn Kelly just gets upset about anything progressive at all. But I do have one slightly more complex question for you guys to answer. Do you think that we would be as yes queen about this if Charlize Theron was not as hot?
I think we don't like people who are not as, and I should say typically, stereotypically attractive, talking about sex in general. I think we have a bias towards when hot people talk about sex, we are way more comfortable with it because it's way more palatable from an aesthetic perspective.
It's almost like fantasy.
And I hate to say this because I don't agree with it, and I do think it's deeply problematic. Like, every single person, regardless of what we look like, are sexual beings and have sexual desires and should have the ability to speak about it in the same way. But I think there is a pretty privilege that is involved in this, absolutely. In the same way that there's a pretty privilege that's involved in men who date down. I think that for a long time, using Leonardo again as an example, for a long time that there was some allowances there and people were a bit like, well, I mean, it's Leonardo or it's Brad Pitt or it's bloody, I don't know, George Clooney, for example. There's a huge age gap between him and Amal. But the thing is like when it is someone who is not attractive, not stereotypically attractive, I should say, and a huge age gap, I think it's harder for us to understand the why.
I agree 100%. There's a pretty privilege. Me personally, it wouldn't have mattered. It wouldn't have mattered who was on that other side, what woman it was, anyone that we've interviewed in the past. Like, it wouldn't have changed it for me. I wonder if it would have changed it for the people like Megyn Kelly. I think it's more about her position. I think that that's what's bothering a lot of people too, is that she is so wealthy, she is so famous, and she is so beautiful. And she's been in, our leading movies for the last 20 to 30 years. I think that has a really big thing to do with it as well. And we like to put people on a pedestal. We like to pretend that they're perfect and they don't make mistakes. And at the end of the day, we're all human. Everybody likes sex. It's innate. It's part of human nature. We just still are uncomfortable with women talking about it. And we'll go to the end of the earth to shame them.